Helen Gerling, CEO of Shaping Cloud. We're a hyperscale cloud partner who helps organizations modernize their IT and maximize their cloud investments. We focus on value, and I think that's a key thing that we've been talking about here, is what are you trying to achieve with cloud, and not just going to cloud for the sake of going to cloud. I have over 2 decades of experience in IT leadership myself, in all roles in IT. And so I've seen firsthand the challenges of traditional technology, but also cloud, challenges and opportunities really for both. So we use that in all of our consideration and advice to our clients. I think I'd agree with the rest of the panel. It's about starting with clarity of purpose. So why are you moving to the cloud? What are the outcomes you're targeting, and being really focused on that. That might be cost reduction, it might be agility, it's often innovation. And then investing in governance frameworks, so having a really clear FinOps strategy, which is more than just tools and processes, it's people, as Karen said. So it's fitting that all into the overall operating model and having alignment between IT and finance and business teams to support that. And then that continuous optimization. So, the cloud journey doesn't end with migration. It's about ongoing cost management, performance tuning, making sure that everything there is still delivering value for your organization. Coming from that TA background as well, myself, we didn't put cost in at the beginning in terms of what we considered, and it is really important in the cloud space. But I don't want anyone to feel afraid or that it's too scary. I think FinOps as a term can be quite nebulous and difficult to get your head around, and it feels like with everything, all the other pressures of running IT for a business, it almost feels like too much to grasp at this stage often, when it's particularly if you're going through a cloud transformation program and you're managing those 2 environments and you're trying to minimize the time period for that, so that the double bubble is minimized in terms of paying for two lots of infrastructure or platforms. What I'd say is it is about governance at the outset. I think Karen mentioned that right at the outset. You need to get that governance in the first place. And what we mean by that is, as Manish was saying, it's about getting that tagging in place. So it's just saying, of everything that's there, what do those costs relate to? It's about creating those resource groups. It's saying, what part of the business, what business system does that relate to? What part of the business? It's getting that structure in place to say, what parts of the business does this relate to, what costs, and then you can start to monitor those and manage those and make decisions about that. I think when we managed on-prem whole architectures, it was always ideal to have control of all of those costs, and I've seen great examples of that, and I've seen complete lack of control of cost there as well. I think what cloud does bring is the tools to be able to monitor those costs, and that's what I love about the hyperscalers or any cloud provider who provides those tools to be able to tag those resources, to be able to have out of the box monitoring tools that project your budgets. You can set a budget for resource group, you can set a limit, you can set alerts in that. It tells you if your costs are going to be projected to go over, etc., so that you have the information to both control your costs and act in time, but also communicate to the business the cost of their decisions. A lot of the time, the business stakeholders will say, I want this, I want that, and not really understand the true cost of what they're asking for. They want 99.9% availability. That's great. Do you really need that for that workload? Is that workload really that critical? Because you will pay more for that kind of thing. So it's being able to be transparent with those costs and use that to arm your conversations with the business to help the business make the most of their money, put that money where it really adds value to the business. So I think it actually can be a really positive thing, but it is something you need to take seriously and design in from the outset. Where do we see those costs creeping up? So to that point, it's about shadow IT things. So it can be, the controls around who can create resources and switch resources on and off is important in that governance layer as well, because there's nothing a techie person likes more than to kind of spin up some resources and have a play, and that's all very well if you have a dev tenant where you can do all of that, where you have some funding specifically allocated for that, but it can get a little bit out of control. You do need to be thinking about where is it sensible to have reserved instances, where is it not, in order to get those better costs. Optimization for workloads that are just static and sitting there for a period of time. Data, if I'd say data costs, storage costs is probably the biggest reason I've seen people say, cloud, it's just costing me too much. I want to consider, coming back on-prem. That's probably the area I've seen most painful, particularly in things like finance industry, legal industry. But the frustration there is actually those costs can be addressed and massively dropped. I've seen costs of storage just with a little bit of analytics, maybe a bit of automation around how often the data is being accessed, that kind of thing, and a strategy around what tiers of storage you're using for that data. But more importantly, even there's opportunities to use third-party things. So for instance, if you're completely reliant upon Azure or AWS storage at the moment for all of your data, actually there are things like the trad storage companies now that can provide the same storage for a lot cheaper, but on those hyperscale platforms. So there are things where they're just more efficient in terms of how they those third parties, in terms of how they manage that storage on your behalf, that bring those costs right down without any impact on performance. So I would say if you do have rising costs in your hyperscale cloud environment at the moment, do look at your storage. That's probably the first place to start, and just say, what's all that costing us, and is there some optimization that can be done in that space. The primary thing is to have buy-in at the C-suite level. You do need all parts of the organization to be pulling in the same direction in order to manage all of this. It shouldn't be seen as just an IT problem. It's an organizational problem, and it's an organizational opportunity as well to have clarity. Nothing, board level, boards want that data. They want to know what's going on in the organization and what opportunities there are to improve profitability. And for that, they need to understand where the costs are and why those costs are, what the costs are. So I don't think it's too difficult to get that C-suite buy-in, but you just need that C-suite buy-in that really kind of translates into action on the ground. I think the first place to kind of bring in those two pieces together is finance and IT, right? Finance are the people that you need working hand in hand with IT. I've not met someone who works in finance who doesn't love data and numbers. So I think a lot of it is education. It's helping the finance teams understand and see the amount of granular data you can get out of the built-in tools as well as third-party tools for what it's costing in the cloud. And if you can get even just a handful of people who see the opportunity for that and kind of grasp that and can champion that within finance, I think that's a real win. I think there are people in IT who want to be involved in the cost side of things, but it's not their core business. It's not what they're getting up in the morning for. They love the tech. That's what they want to do. They want to see the business valuing and seeing the difference that tech can make. But the cost side of it is perhaps something that gets less focus in the IT business itself. So I think getting those finance people really engaged, understanding the cost controls and the tools and the data that's in there, and then figuring out how to pull that out to inform where the alerts go in terms of who and the processes around who responds to those alerts and what they do, and then who they can talk to in in IT around how those costs can be optimized. It's definitely, you know, a new stronger relationship between IT and finance that's needed to really make that difference. But all of the tools and the data's there, you know, and they're easy to access. You know, you've got APIs, you get some you know, devs and data people on it. All that data's there to be pulled out, used. You can put automation in it, you can put AI in it to, you know, proactively apply policies that you decide as finance you want to do, and in agreement with tech, to keep those costs down, or to you alert the right people to review something at the right time. So it's all there, but it does need the people side to pull it together, to align it to processes, to align it to policies, and yeah, to enable that cost control to happen. Yeah. I think, you know, AI is only good as the quality of the data that you feed it. And, you know, large language models are brilliant and Gen AI is brilliant. But at the end of the day, you know, they're doing a bit of guesswork, and a bit of, you know, predictive analysis, but with access to a huge, you know, much more data than probably we could ever fit in our heads. So they are great. They're great for specific purposes, but that's not where I would start. I would start with, where's the data? What are you tracking? What data are you collecting? What's the quality of that data? Is the data structured in a way that you can actually make use of that in a meaningful way? And then I would look at standardization. You know, before you ever go into automation, you're automating something that you've already defined. So you're automating a process that you've defined, then you're standardizing that. You're saying that that works for us, and then you're automating it so that there's no manual element to that. So you're making that much more cost efficient to do. So I think a combination of standardization, automation, and getting the data collection and structure right, that forms then the foundation whereby you can then apply like AI on top to say, okay, great, now let's ask it questions, you know, where might I be able to optimize, what is being utilized, what isn't, etc. And then start modifying your automation accordingly. So saying, if this, then do this, you know, classic automation processes then support that. So I think you're then becoming, you know, AI informing automation, maybe automating the automation, or generating the automation. And eventually, I think that generation of automation will absolutely be there. I think we're not quite there yet in terms of maturity to be able to remove a human decision from any part of that process. Unfortunately, I love AI and use it daily, but it is still very flawed. It doesn't do data and mathematics very well. It does you know, estimate and assume at times. So you just need to be careful about what AI are you using, and how are you applying that. But it will get there eventually. And the other thing I'd say is just in the hyperscalers themselves, you know, they are investing in AI. Those tools that are used to inform you about how to optimize, they make recommendations. They say, here's the things that the top of the list, why don't you look at these things in order to optimize? That's all fed by analytics and data and AI that they're investing in the platform. So you don't need to go creating your own at this stage. I think use what's there, but do have it on a roadmap for that idea of, you know, AI, yes, automating or generating the automation that's required in order to apply your policies. That doesn't get away from, you know, deciding what your policies are, that will then inform all of that. That idea of, you know, accruing tech debt faster than you're eradicating, it's so true. I see it all over the place. It's just as organizations are trying to desperately grasp and stay, you know, ahead of the curve, ahead of their competition, with M&As, you know, all of these reasons just like add so much tech debt. And I would say, you know, I know this is supposed to be a focus on cloud, but I would say that is the biggest issue from a sustainability perspective, is all, and complexity and cost management as well, you know, all of that tech debt You know, if you can actually say, okay, we're now consolidated and we've achieved this, and we can then archive all that off or switch that off, that's a massive improvement to energy consumption, as well as just, you know, tech, you know, even the materials themselves. From a sustainability perspective, it's probably the biggest way to address sustainability in tech at the moment. Yeah, and you know, the hyperscalers, you know, they're focusing on sustainability as well, so you know, that you can kind of rely upon that. One of the differences, of course, is, you know, when you stop using something in the cloud, you switch it off, you stop consuming, and therefore you stop the cost and you stop the energy consumption, whereas that's not true of on-prem. You know, whenever anyone's put any infrastructure on premise, we've always over provisioned. It's just something you do to make sure that you've got room to grow. And just because you stop using some storage doesn't mean that that SAN doesn't still need to keep running, and that SAN is consuming energy, and that energy is, you know, contributing to energy, you know, sustainable, you know, carbon footprint as well as costs. So that is one of the benefits of cloud, but I would say that change is, although good, is not as big a change as addressing that tech debt, as Karen said. You know, being able to just switch stuff off is really key.